Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of AgogeTV. I'm your host Phil Leonard.
And I'm your host Josh Summersgill.
On today's podcast, we have the voice of the CrossFit Games, Sean Woodland. I'm going to really quickly pass it over to Sean to tell you a little bit more about himself and what he's currently up to in the world of CrossFit. So, Sean, take it away.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you having me on today. So about myself, well, I don't know where you want me to start. I guess I got involved in CrossFit in 2012.
Yeah.
At least from the broadcasting standpoint, I've been doing it since 2007.
Okay.
So through a weird kind of confluence of events, I got involved in the media team in 2012, and then I got hired on full-time in 2013. And then worked there, obviously, until everyone knows what happened with that.
Yeah.
And then once that all the changes took place, Tommy Marquez and I, wanted to stay involved. There was a lot going on at that time that we wanted to make sure that we were still involved in the space because it looked like that maybe a bigger company or another company was going to come in and take over at least the media of the games and covering it. So we wanted to stay relevant just in case that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought about, what could we do that would be at an acceptable level for us as far as, production and quality. And we decided on a podcast because it was low overhead. It's something that Tommy had wanted to do for a while, actually, that he pitched multiple times at CrossFit and only to be told no, and then to watch, Sevon end up doing one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that we wanted to do. So we started it, not really knowing where it was going to go, but again, just with the goal of trying to stay in the space. And it kind of took off and started doing pretty well. So we just kept taking the next step, whatever that next step was. And we tried to do the studio thing for a little bit. We had a space actually that was basically across the street, across the highway from CrossFit HQ. That was that Inside Elite Fitness thing that we did, and we brought that back for about a month or so, maybe a little bit longer. And it was just a matter of we just didn't have the financial resources. We got some great support from people who sent in some money to help us out, but the time and the amount of people that we needed in order to sustain it, it wasn't going to work. So we went back to the podcast, and it's been going really well for us. And Tommy still does stuff for Morning Chalk Up, and I still do some stuff for Rogue and some other organizations on the side. But so far, so good. We're just hoping that this thing, keeps going and gets back one day to the level it was before everything happened in 2018.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I say, I've been following Talking Elite Fitness for a really long time. But I actually think it was everyone got laid off from HQ, as you mentioned, and then I was kind of I got the sort of what am I going to do? Where's my inside the leaderboard and all that? And I'm like, I just felt so much better hearing you and Tommy talking. I was like, that's it, I'm hooked. That's it. I feel so much better. I've got my daily fix now, and I can.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
So it was really good. And one of my questions was to ask you why you decided on a podcast and what brought you and Tommy together. Was you really good friends beforehand, or was that?
Yeah, Tommy and I worked together for a while, obviously, and we were just both kind of in the same boat after everything happened. Tommy actually was part of the second round. We were both part of the second round of layoffs. So the first happened when we basically like a week after we got back from the games. So we were riding this high, and then all of a sudden it just totally changed. So Tommy and I survived the first one, but the rumor was that at the time we were working on the post-production shows. So I think it was 5 or 6 1-hour-long shows that we were doing for CBS Sports Network, where we take all the stuff that we shot at the games and we condense it into an hour, and then we have to produce it. So we were working on those. So the rumor was that we were all going to get axed after that. And that ended up being the case. So when I think it was October 11th or 12th, we ended up getting the notification. Tommy was actually out the following Monday. So he left a couple months earlier. They kept me on because I was one of the people who was basically really involved in putting those post-production shows together. So I knew I was getting fired. I just had to stay on until December.
Ouch.
So Tommy was out, and he and I obviously worked together with the Update Show pretty closely. And we kept talking, and we were just trying to figure out, what we were going to do to stay involved. And Tommy had a lot more time to kind of deal with it than I did because I was still in the building, and Tommy was, just trying to figure out what the landscape was going to be like and things like that. And at the time, both of us were talking to a company by the name of IMG that owns the UFC.
Right.
They were in negotiations to take over the media production and the covering of the CrossFit Games season. And we were thinking, okay, well, what do we have to do to, how can we stay relevant to make sure that if and when that deal does happen, that we're two of the guys that they bring on. And they were already talking to us, but we just wanted to make sure that, that was something that was going to happen. And so Tommy had been thinking about a podcast for a while. And then when I left the building in December, that's when we really started talking about it. But for me, the wound was, still pretty fresh. And I was thinking, do I even want to do this anymore? Do I want to be part of this? Is this sport still going to continue? Tommy had gotten over that. He'd had a couple months to mourn the whole thing. So in January, once we both kind of had a little bit of time to kind of think about what we were doing, and we were talking to other people about maybe starting some different stuff up, we both said, all right, let's just do this. Let's just figure out how to do this. And we kind of had to force ourselves to record that first episode. In fact, we recorded the first episode twice because the first one just turned into a huge just bitch fest. We were just complaining and like, this isn't that. We listened to it and we went, yeah, that's not, we don't want to do that. Like, that's not kind of how we want
I'd listen to that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the second recording, we obviously complained a lot too, but I mean, I think we wanted to be just a little more objective about, okay, here's what happened, here's what's going on, and here's what we plan on doing about it.
Yeah.
And then so we just said, all right, let's just keep doing this, because at the time, neither one of us really had a ton going on. I had some freelance work that I was doing, but Tommy, I give him a ton of credit because he really had been beating this drum for a while, and then I just kind of came along and said, yeah, all right, this is the right thing to do. And Tommy's been good at his relationships that he's built, has gotten us some sponsors. Yeah. And I think that our skill sets are complementing each other really well in this venture. And yeah, he's a great friend, and he's a really good partner now too. So I wouldn't be, this thing wouldn't be working without him. He was a huge part of getting it going.
Yeah, and to be fair, like I say, I'm always in a bit of awe of Tommy as well, because like his knowledge. I always like to think I'm pretty clued up, but it's like Josh. We'll throw this out there. I'll throw him under the bus. Josh doesn't listen to the podcast. He doesn't listen to podcasts other than ours.
Not that I don't listen to yours, Sean.
He just doesn't listen.
Don't listen to podcasts really, because basically Phil is that CrossFit that any information that comes out, he knows, and then he fills it all out and then passes the good stuff on to me.
Yeah, but now it's really easy because I just listen to you guys and then go, oh, now I know what I've got to tell Josh. Just pass it on. But yeah, Tommy's knowledge of like regionals and past games history is really up there. I actually would go as far as say I don't think there's anybody in the space that knows as much as he does.
Then there's a couple, I feel like I have a pretty good handle on some things just by virtue of the fact of seeing some of this stuff in person. But he is, I'm like, how do you remember that? Yeah, he definitely has a computer-like brain up there.
Yeah, 100%. Now, another quick question. Obviously, I'd love to keep talking about Talking Elite Fitness, and I highly recommend any of our listeners go and check you guys out if you don't listen to them already. Because, like I say, this is where I get all my information from. But one thing I've got to ask you about, because it drove me absolutely insane since 2018. So, obviously, when you call in the CrossFit Games, I feel like you've probably got an idea of what you're going to say when certain things happen. So, like when Rich Ferroni won in 2014, it was like 2011, Fittest Man on Earth, 2013. And obviously, everyone remembers that. And then when Ben Smith won, it's like Superman doesn't wear a cape, CrossFit Games. So, again, really famous calls. When Tia Claire Toomey was going towards the line, and and she's like, Tia Claire Toomey from down under, and then you stop and you can't away, and I'm like, what was he going to say?
Yeah.
Do you remember what he was going to say?
The whole thing up, man. I was like I had it ready to go, and you're right. Like a lot of times, I started doing that in 2014. I actually started writing down what I thought I was going to say, and there was a couple guys I would run it by beforehand. And they'd give me, like, I like this one, don't like that one. I'd write a couple different ones. But yeah, I had one ready for Tia. And I started it, and then she dropped the damn weight. And I went, you just screwed up my call. But it was so exciting that it really didn't matter. But I was going to say, I think she comes from down under, but now she's on top of the world. Tia Toomey is the fittest woman on earth. And so, yeah, I started that. And then like you said, she dropped the damn thing. And I went, oh, come on. Like, I can't do that again. But it worked out because it was probably the most exciting moment that I've ever been part of it in my whole career calling the games. I mean, it was just to be in that Coliseum with that crowd going as bananas as they were. I mean, Tanya Wagner and I wear headsets so we can hear each other when we speak. But it was so loud that we were screaming at one another, basically. I really couldn't hear her through my headset because sound had feeling at that point. I mean, people were just going nuts in there.
Yeah, it was insane. And I think it was 2 a.m. over here, and I was sat there watching it. I was like with my head in my hands, just like, what's going on? And normally, no offense, but I can go, oh, it's all done now, and like I know who's won, and go to bed. And then like, but that year I was sort of like, oh, I've got to wait up and see who's bloody won now. Got another hour.
I knew who, like we knew who won based on the one cool thing about when we used to do the games is that we had this really robust scoring system, live scoring system that we could see in the booth. So I knew based on what needed to happen who had won. Like we were about 99% sure, but we're always told don't say it until they make the announcement, unless it's totally clear, like it was like in the case of Matt Fraser or Froning or something like that. But so we knew, but we just had to like play like we didn't know. So that's a little insider information there. Most of the time we know what happened, but we just can't say it.
Yeah, cool. And speaking of insider information, something else that I picked up on the Talking Elite Fitness podcast is you actually knew the open workouts in advance.
A couple times we did. Yeah. I'm trying to think the year it started, but when we first started broadcasting them, I think that was 2012. We first started doing live announcements. I'm pretty sure it was. We didn't know that year. And Dave had always kept that information circle really tight. And we figured out, well, he figured out, and we had known for a while, the broadcast side had known that we can do a much better show and we can have much better information ready to go for the viewing audience at home if we know what things are in advance, because then we can prepare some history, we can prepare information on the movements, stuff like that. It makes it a much better show. So I think it was either a year later, somewhere in there, where they started letting us in on what the workouts were. But I mean, we had to sign non-disclosure agreements, and that if we leaked it, we were in trouble. And everyone just kept their mouth shut. So and I learned this from Pat Sherwin. People used to ask me, hey, you know what the workouts are? And if I would say, yeah, I do, well, then they will not let you leave. They won't leave you alone. They'll keep grilling you and grilling you and grilling you. And inevitably, you're going to let something stupid slip because you're going to say something.
Yeah.
So Pat, and it's brilliant. He goes, yeah, just say you don't know. And I went, oh, well, that makes total sense. So people would ask me, like, yeah, I don't know. And we did. But to just underline the severity of having that information and what could happen if you let it out, I actually saw someone get escorted off the premises in 2016, I think it was, who had been kind of leaking information, and they figured out who it was, and they fired the guy on the spot. And he never worked again.
So how far in advance did you know the workouts? Are you talking like a week, 2 weeks?
We knew them all to start. So like a couple weeks before the open is when they would tell us, and then we would start getting.
How did that affect your training leading?
I will be totally honest with you. There was one time, and I actually was like, I'm going to try this one before I do it. I did it in my garage, and I couldn't do all of it because I think it had muscle ups in it. I think it was the one. And Tommy would know this. I wish he was here. Yeah, it was with like a bunch of wall. Oh, it was I think it was the 7 muscle ups at the start. Yeah, I actually did that rings in my garage, so I could kind of practice it. 7 muscle ups and then
50 wall balls, and 50 double unders or 50 double unders or something. Yeah.
So I ran through a couple. That's the only time I've ever done one ahead of time. So
I'd have definitely been doing it.
You got me on that one.
What are you doing?
I'd have definitely been doing them in advance. I'd have been practicing them on show up to the gym.
It was sort of known around the office that we knew what they were. So we had to be very careful about going down to the gym and programming workouts, because if all of a sudden we were doing an open workout, people were going to, they paid a little extra attention to you. Like, hey, what's I doing? Maybe I should practice that one. So I tried to totally stay away from it. I didn't want to
I love it. So obviously you got involved in CrossFit way back when, and I just want to know a little bit more about, like, obviously we know a lot about the CrossFit Games. I'd like to know a bit more about how you got into CrossFit initially, and like what, like the usual, the first workout, what got you hooked?
Yeah. So I was living in Jacksonville, Florida at the time, and I was working for a local TV station down there. I was their weekend sports anchor, and I worked with a guy in our department whose wife was a personal trainer, and she worked at a gym. It wasn't a CrossFit gym, that was really close to where our station was. And at the time, it was 2007, and I was doing the typical, meathead workouts. Mondays chest, and Tuesdays back and buys, and Wednesday is, tries and shoulders, and Thursday's leg day, but you skip that and you just run on the treadmill. So that was, and then I played a little hockey, and that was about it. And I was looking just for something different. And I first started talking to my friend Matt about maybe getting his wife being my personal trainer, because I wanted to just try something else. And he's like, yeah, and actually she just started doing this thing called CrossFit. I go, okay, well, what's that? He said, you just go to a website and they have a workout that they post, and then you just do it. That's your workout for the day. And it's pretty cool. She started, and she didn't have like an L1 or anything like that. She was just starting to incorporate some of the workouts and some of the movements. I said, all right, well, okay, I'll give that a try. So I remember I went in, and she worked on, kind of taught me how to do an air squat, and which I'd never learned. Taught me how to do kind of a kipping pull-up that was terrible, and worked me through some other stuff. And then the workout I was going to do, it wasn't even full Cindy. It was just, you're going to do 10 rounds for time of Cindy. I went, okay. And honestly, it nearly killed me. I was like, and when it was over, I went, this is impossible. Who can do this? This is crazy. Like, no one works out like this. This is for superheroes. Like, I was just blown away by like how simple it was, but how it just crushed me. And from that point on, I was hooked. I realized, like, after that workout, I said to myself, you have been doing this wrong basically your whole life. And I just jumped into it, full on. And I started, going to all the websites and watching all the videos and trying to learn all the stuff. And there's a couple guys who worked at that gym where I was working out at who were also doing CrossFit. So I would work out with them sometimes. And I loved every second of it. I had realized that, man, I had these fitness goals throughout my life that I was never able to achieve because I was just working out wrong. And then I jumped into the diet part of it, and that changed. And it's crazy, like, how much you think and it's all wrong. And it changed my life. I mean, I was, it was really just a good lesson. And if you put in the right work, you will see results. It was the first time that I'd really experienced that, at least in the fitness standpoint.
Love it. And like, I think the cool thing about CrossFit is, like, everyone has the same story of how they got into CrossFit, but it's just different. But everyone's is slightly different as well. Yeah. It's like there's always something in there that's like quite unique to that person. Like I always tell about Josh's first time coming and doing CrossFit, and he hated it, and like he was like this is stupid, what you're doing, and like it took me 12 months.
The problem for me was I come from a background of when I was doing stuff, I'd be naturally quite good at it. So coming into CrossFit, I think one of my first workouts was Nancy, and I had to do it with a PVC pipe. And as a red-blooded male, I was just like, this is shit. This is not for me.
I'm not good at it right off the bat. I'm like, this is dumb. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, I don't need to do this. Yeah, I think with CrossFit, it kicks everyone's ass, and then you either don't do it again or immediately fall in love with it, don't you?
Right.
100%. And you are, and congratulations, by the way, because you're recently a dad.
Yes, thank you.
Then I've got to ask you, so are you dad strong now? Has that kicked in yet?
I don't know about that, man. I have, it's funny because I say that I am learning to function on less sleep, but my wife is getting less than I am. She's responsible for all the feeding and all that, because I'm just physically incapable of doing it.
Seems fair.
But it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to get the dad bod. Like, I am swearing that off. Like, that is not happening. And at the beginning, it definitely threw a wrench into everything. I mean, it's great though, but from a fitness standpoint, I had my routine where there's a certain part of the day where I'd kind of get my workouts in just based around kind of what I was doing work-wise. And then it turned out like I was out in the garage working out at like 10:30 at night sometimes just to get it in, just to do something. But yeah, I don't know if the dad strength has come in yet.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for mine. So don't worry.
I think it's only moms get that. I think that's a total myth with fathers.
Mine's 10. So if I've got it, I'm screwed. Like, I'm actually in her room right now and she's locked out. So
Nice.
you have a Talking Elite Fitness garage. We have we have an AgogeTV
Nice.
bedroom.
Yeah, hey man, whatever works.
So I've got to ask as well, and I feel like you were spying on me because I come up with this idea about how the CrossFit Games should work. I wrote all this down. I was dead
Just
excited
tell
because
Sean where you were when you had this idea.
I was in the shower.
That's where all the good ideas hit.
Yeah.
I don't know why. In that room.
Good ideas hit me in the shower all the time, and I'm sat there and I'm like, why doesn't everybody just do this? And and it was kind of as everything was sort of unfolding with this year's CrossFit Games, and Mayhem had just announced that they're having an event, which I want to ask you about a bit later on. And obviously the age groups were sort of going on. I was like, why don't they just have them all on separate weeks and just run it by, like, so week 1 age group, week 2 teams, week 3 national champs, and then that's sort of like an interim level for you, like maybe like you're not allowed to be a pro at that stage or something like that, and then you have the pros or individuals week 4, and that's like, I was like, that's how this should work. And in an ideal world as well, Rogue or Loud and Live or somebody like that comes in, takes over and makes it great, and somehow we still managed to keep Dave Castro as the main programmer of the CrossFit Games. So this is my imagination running wild, and then like literally a week later I'm sat listening to Talking Elite Fitness and I'm like, they've solved it.
So it's one of those. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go on, I was going to say, so first of all, what would have to happen for like all of my for my dreams to come true, basically?
What would have to happen? Okay, I think the main thing, and I was told this when after everything kind of changed, and if you think back to maybe it was last year around this time when CrossFit pulled the plug on all their social media,
Mm-hmm.
and all just disappeared basically, and all those changes started happening. I reached out to some people who used to be in kind of the inner circle with Greg, who were no longer there, who spoke to me about some stuff off the record. And the sense that I got is that Greg just wants control of what's going on. I don't think he's concerned about what the events look like as far as who's doing them, but I think he just wants a say and wants control. So I think, if that makes sense, in order to have the scenario, and I totally agree with you, I think that the future of the age groups and the teams is getting them off CrossFit's plate, letting other people put on the competitions,
Mm-hmm.
because those divisions, while they may not be the marquee attraction like the individuals are, they work extremely hard to get to where they are, and they deserve the same amount of recognition and a chance to prove their fitness that the individuals do. And I think that by removing them from the main sort of competition of the individuals, you give them their own spotlight, and you let the focus be on them. And you put the event in the hands of people who are really focused on it, because I think at the games, they want to do a good job of putting on every competition, but the teams and the age groups are an afterthought. They are not the priority. That doesn't mean that they don't want to put on a good show.
Yeah.
At least as far as the organization goes, and the people who work behind the scenes do a fantastic job of doing that. It's just not the priority. So I think in order for something like that to happen, CrossFit, and Greg specifically, would have to be willing to just give up control, or at least give up more control than he would have wanted to be a year ago.
Right.
Whereas CrossFit just becomes, all right, we're going to award the competition to you guys. Here are a few things that you have to do. Have at it. And I don't know if they want to do that right now. That might change, and I think maybe what's going on right now with the pandemic and how that's affected everybody financially and companies all over the world, that may push that process forward a little bit. I don't know, but I think that would be the first big domino that would have to fall. They'd have to be willing to say, okay, yeah, you guys just go ahead and do it. We're not, the games were sort of the thing that they were holding on to protecting after they got rid of regionals and everything. But I think now, if they saw that they could make a good amount of money from bidding this out and letting other people do it, and they would do a good job of it to where it lived up to the standard, I think maybe CrossFit would be more willing to do that. But that's the first big one that's got to fall. They got to be willing to take their hands off of it a little bit more than I think they're willing to right now.
Yeah. But, yeah, that's kind of, it's good because that's kind of the way I saw it. In the things that I see and the things that I was thinking about again was just that if you could sort of like say, if you could get a combination of like the way Rogue do their, I mean, like you got the Arnold, if you had a CrossFit Games like the Arnold and spread out over a week or something, or like spread a couple of weeks, and then you had like, again, you see the job that Loud and Live do at Wadapalooza, all those things, like I'm like, that would just make the best CrossFit Games ever. And there's, to me, there's no reason not to do it if you're financially not going to be in a worse place for CrossFit. So like, I'm like, well, see, seems like common sense, but then
Suppose they've sort of like done similar with sanctionals, haven't they? They kind of like passed on the regionals back into the sanctionals. Mm-hmm. Obviously, all the external business to do it. So the next one obviously would be the games, but that's the baby, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the issue. And but
I don't give it away, are they?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I think if they keep, I think a lot of it just depends on what happens this year. If they keep the individuals and they put on a really good show and they say, hey, this has actually worked out really well, then maybe. But then the other thing they got to consider too is that if you're going to continue to hold the individual competition in Madison and you're going to get rid of the teams and the individuals that weekend as well, that's a significant amount of tickets that you're not selling to those people. Now, look, I'm sure people will still jump in and buy them to go see the individuals, but that's something you got to look at as well. You know, you're probably going to have fewer fans, family members who are showing up. So you got to take that into account too. So that may have a little bit of a financial impact on what you're doing in Madison. I don't know that for sure, but I think that'd be something that they would think about.
Yeah. And like I say, that's my dream scenario anyway. And it's good that I think, and again, it might be a bit off, but like, I think the idea of having a national champs going into an individual, like national champs, they're basically like, I don't know, it's think of it like you have the PGA Tour, there's a level below the PGA Tour, and they're your national champs, that's their stage, that's where you want to see people. And I'm like, and I'd still watch it because I'd be interested to see like who's potentially coming through. It's like, yeah. So
the interesting thing is, though, touching on what you just said then, Sean, is Phil would watch that, but I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'd be straight watching individuals. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's interesting.
I think that's what's happening anyway. I mean, I don't think a lot of people are watching. The one reason why, well, the big reason why there was no media coverage of the age groups this year is that when you look at the amount of money that they would spend to get those streams out there, as opposed to the amount of people who would view it, it just wasn't worth the money for them. And I hate saying that because the masters and the age groups are all fantastic athletes, but they are not the individuals. And that's what people really want to watch. Yeah. And it's friends and family who are basically watching the masters for the most part. There might be some people, stragglers coming in and checking that out, but yeah, it just wasn't, I knew it was going to be the first thing to go when they wanted to cut back on media, because there was, I don't know, we had like 9 TV trucks out there during the height of it. I mean, it was massive. It was bigger than almost as big as the Super Bowl, if not bigger, the amount of cameras and all the stuff that we had. And, we had 2 venues that were wired up, 2 or 3 venues that were wired up for masters alone. That's a lot of money that you can send by just getting rid of it. So
it's not quite Matt Fraser winning the sprint event in 2016.
No, it is not. There are some cool competitions, and there are some good stories in the masters. And that's why I think that they need to separate it and let them have their own competition where you can tell those really well.
Yeah. Agreed. 100%. Okay. Now we've got some sort of, I don't want to say fun finishing questions, but we have some questions that are just like recommendations, that kind of thing. And then we've got another segment that we call This and That, which we'll come on to in a bit. And I've actually changed it specifically for you this week. Right. So first of all, recommendations wise, we always like to ask, and this is mainly so that I can add to my book collection. But do you have any books that you recommend or think everybody should read?
Well, my favorite book ever now, is called Ready Player One, and they made it into a movie.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The movie was fun, but the book is 1,000 times better. It's unbelievable. And for a kid, like a nerd child of the 80s, it's just gold. I mean, it's just like reliving my entire childhood reading that book. So I love that one. I'm a big kind of just sci-fi nerd with books that I read. I'm trying to think of one that's maybe not sci-fi that I read that's good, but I'm really not as well rounded as I should be in that department. But I'd say Ready Player One. If you're looking for just like a good, the movie, like I said, the movie's fun. It's great. It's not the book, and the book is so much better. Even if you just get the audio version that Will Wheaton does, it's fantastic.
Right. Okay.
So I'd recommend that. In fact, my wife, who is not a sci-fi person, she knew that I really liked the book, and so I got it on audio. She goes, well, let me listen to some of that. And so I said, okay. So we listened to the first chapter, and she's like, can we listen to another chapter? I went, hell yeah, we'll listen to another chapter. And then I remember one night we came home from, I think we were out walking the dog. She goes, hey, can we listen to another chapter? I said, yes, we can. Let's sit down and let's do it. So it's just a great book. So that'd be the
My dad told me to watch that yesterday, right? Believe it or not.
Oh, really?
And I said to my wife, let's watch it. And she heard that apparently Master Chief out of Halo makes an appearance in it or something, or there's some reference to it. And she was immediately like, we're not watching that. I was like, what do you mean? Why not?
Cool. I thought
I'm going to get the audiobook and she's going to listen to it and then we can watch it.
I'm telling you, the book it's basically like the story is somewhat the same, but the book is, and I love the movie but the book is so much better. It's so good. It's really good.
To be fair, you did have to trick your wife into watching an hour of Star Wars.
I did.
What?
I did. So she point blank won't watch Star Wars. And what were the spin-off ones called?
Was it Rogue One? It was Rogue One.
So I said to her, oh, let's watch Rogue One. She was like, what is it? I was like, oh, you like it? We're into it. And then we must have got about half an hour in, and then somebody mentioned the Force, and then that was it. She was like,
oh, man.
Star Wars? I was like, no. I was like, Stormtroopers are white, they're black, they're not Stormtroopers. And that was it.
Like, I don't know if this video or not, but I'll show you. This is my Star Wars stuff that I have over here.
Oh, wow. Yes. Look at that.
So my wife tolerates it, and she's very good at like indulging me in my hobbies. But yeah, I don't think she's much of a fan.
No, I like it, and I like the fact that because everybody always wants to give us like a self-help book, you know what I mean? So it's good to get some. I'm a big fiction fan, to be fair. So
yeah, man, I'm sure one will pop into my head, but yeah, that's the one, man. I love that book.
Cool. I've got an Audible credit waiting for me as well, to be fair. So that's, I mean, now next question will be if you could. And this is probably apt for you because you get to interview lots of people, but if you could sit down and interview any one person, and basically just absorb as much knowledge, information, and good times from them, who would you sit down with? And you got basically 24 hours to speak to them and get as much as you can out of them.
Wow, that's
dead or alive as well.
Dead or alive, yeah. You can go anyone.
Okay. All right, I got to think about this. I got to talk my way through this. So
they can be fictional as well if they, if you want.
So the first person that came to mind is an American broadcaster by the name of Al Michaels, who's been around forever, who I think is responsible for the greatest call ever in all of sports with the Miracle on Ice in 1980. He'd be one. I'd love to just sit down and just get stories from him. Let's see about if I was going to go like athletes. I might go. I mean, Michael Jordan would be good. Michael Jordan would be a good person, I think, to talk to, even though because the whole thing that just with the documentary that just ran, he'd be one to talk to. I think Tiger Woods would be another one. I think anybody who's just at the top of his or her field, who's just a legend. Man, that's a really good question. I've really thought about that. From a selfish standpoint, I'd probably want to talk to a guy by the name of Bob Miller, who used to be the play-by-play guy for the Los Angeles Kings of the NHL. I grew up listening to him, so he'd be fun to talk to.
Okay, cool. And actually, it brings me this is just a question that popped into my head then. But obviously, you've interviewed a lot of games athletes and fun people to be around. Who is the most fun to interview?
Oh wow. The guy who I always enjoy talking to and you always walk away going like, man, that is a good person, is Chandler Smith.
Yeah.
If you ever have a chance to talk to him one-on-one, he is, and CrossFit is just full of just genuinely good people from an athlete standpoint. I've covered sports where it's the total opposite. There's a couple of real good ones, but a couple that, for the most part, they're all kind of jerks. But Chandler just has this genuine kindness about him and interest in people, and this, you can just tell that he is a good person.
And he's hilarious.
Yeah, and he's a great kid. And if my son comes to me one day and says, "Hey, Dad, I want to be like Chandler Smith," I'd be like, "All right, I've succeeded as a parent. Good." I'm like, I can I can take the uniform off. But yeah, he's really good. Pat Vellner's always great to talk to. And here's a guy that, and this kind of probably seems obvious, but I didn't have a chance to talk to a lot. But the more I do talk to him, the more I become a fan is Rich Froning.
Right.
He's fantastic. Matt Fraser's always going to give you good answers. Let's see. Tia Toomey's always really good to talk to. Cara Saunders is never at a loss for words. She'll talk to you. But yeah, Chandler's just a guy that I genuinely look forward to talking to anytime I have a chance.
I'm going to message him and say, my good friend Sean Woodland told me.
Go ahead.
In fact, that I did completely forget to mention this one as well. How excited are you for the Mayhem Classic? No, it's not the Mayhem Classic, sorry, the Mayhem Team, whatever that amazing thing is.
I'm really excited for it. I mean, first of all, it looks like, fingers crossed, it looks like I'm going to be able to go and Tommy and I are going to call the action. That's not set in stone, but it looks like that's going to happen. So for me, it's just exciting to be able to go and do an event again. But I also think that, you can say that maybe they're throwing in some gimmicks, and I think that would be like the event draft. But I think they're cool. I think like it's really neat to give the athletes an opportunity to kind of have a say in what they're going to do and be strategic about it. And if you listen to our episode where we actually interviewed Rich about the event, he said we got that idea from what we did at the Invitational one year. We actually had a chance to kind of. So I think that I'm really excited for it, man. I think that, having been there for the Mayhem Classic and seeing how they make such good use of that space. It's a huge gym, but when you talk about actually putting on an event with spectators, it's kind of small. When you take into account, you got to make the competition floor and all that stuff. But to see what that place becomes and the way that they do it, I think it's going to be awesome. I think the athletes are going to love it. I think the fans are really going to enjoy watching it. And I think that, go back to our prior conversation about, is this the future, or should it be the future of the way that we decide champions? If it goes really well, it's going to be hard to not want to do that again. Like if the athletes go and they have a great time, like, hey, I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed the games. There's going to be momentum now to do that again next year. Even if you have the games, maybe even they decide we're going to do our own team event. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it turns out.
For sure, and like you say, I think it is a little bit gimmicky, but also like I don't think you could have come up with another solution where Rich Froning does the programming and that's not fair. Like especially if he's going to take part. So
if there's a draft, and I love anytime there's like a draft, I'll watch that. So that'll be fun.
We miss out on the drafts over here. We never I never really get them.
Weird American thing that we do, yeah.
Well, but I'm 100% in for this just to see what people do and see how people choose where the workouts are going to go and things like that. I think that'll be really interesting. And I think I might be more excited for that than the individuals, maybe just a little bit.
Well, I think because the individuals are so unknown at this point.
Yeah.
We don't know what that competition is going to look like. We don't know if they're going to let all 30 men and women compete for the entire weekend or whatever the span of the competition is going to be. We don't know if they're going to be cuts. Like there's not. Whereas at least with the Mayhem event, you know the structure, and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. It's a week long, and they're going to have 2 rest days with 6 days of competition. So it's going to be neat.
Yeah, and just watching Rich Froning compete is always fun anyway.
Exactly.
So it's always I went down Strength in Depth just to I don't want to say just to watch Rich Froning, but because I had an athlete there and she's going to listen to this and kill me now.
Oh, you went to watch Matt Fraser as well.
Sorry, yeah, Matt Fraser was there as well. But like I say, just watching those guys compete the way they do it is it's pretty special. So
they're incredible.
Looking forward to that. Okay, the questions. We got so distracted then I forgot that we had questions. So now, last question is sort of like the tough ones. If you could choose another profession, and any profession you want to choose, what would it be? You got a pretty cool job though. So
I'm pretty. There's so many. I mean, I would love to be like be a musician in a band. I'd love to be like an actor. That might be fun. A professional athlete.
Yeah,
that'd be. But yeah, too bad I'm not gifted enough to actually do that.
What sport would you go for though if you was a pro athlete?
I go back and forth. I would love to be a pro hockey player because I think that you can have a little more longevity. I also think American football would be good too, but you get so beat up in that game. So yeah, I'd probably go with hockey just because I still play it and I love it. Not very good at it, but yeah, that'd be one. My brother is involved in video games, and I think that would be fun too, to be like a video game producer or designer. So yeah, those are the ones that come to mind right off the bat.
Awesome.
Excellent. Okay, so last section is this or that, and I've added a couple of questions specifically for you. First few questions, easy one. Start off with an easy one. Snatch or clean and jerk?
Snatch.
Running or rowing?
Rowing.
Running.
My man. Yeah. No. That's why we talked about Murph before we came on. Like I am so bad at Murph because I am terrible at running. I'm just not a good runner.
But to give people some context, you're 6 foot. I'm
6'1". Yeah.
6'1". Yeah.
Of course, you're gonna choose running. I'm 3 foot 4, so I'm gonna choose running.
Yeah. No, I'll row every day of the week, man.
And on Talking Elite Fitness, you refer to yourself as a rig shaker, don't you? That's the
rig shaker. Yeah, the big guys who get up there and we're actually working on those shirts.
Yeah, definitely. I need one of those shirts. Definitely.
You're not big enough to be a rig shaker.
I'll put on some tin.
You can be one in spirit.
I'll go and start. I'll do what Heber and Mars did. I'll just eat.
Tommy's actually going to try that today.
Yeah.
He's actually doing that today.
Wow.
So before after he does Murph.
Josh won't have seen this because, like I say, he's out the loop. Have you seen it? Oh, well played. I'm proud of you. Awesome. So basically, just for those that are listening that haven't seen it, Heber and Mars, the Buttery Bros, they have basically tried to put on as much weight as they possibly could in 10 hours. Now,
that's crazy.
I can put some food away, so I think I got that. And that's
Tommy is taking on that challenge today, so we'll see how that goes.
I used to be known as Big Philly for a reason. So where was your two? I keep getting very distracted today. Front squat or back squat?
Can I say neither? Front squat.
Front squat. Pizza or ice cream?
Ice cream.
Gold medal, Olympic gold medal, or £1 million?
I'll take £1 million.
Nice. Cookies or donuts?
Oh man, cookies.
Oh, big shout. Books or movies?
It depends, but I'll go. I think it just depends. Movies has always been a passion, but I love books too. This is like all these choices you're giving me are like 1 and 1A.
Don't make me choose.
I think I know the answer to this one. Sports or reality TV?
Oh, sports.
Okay. And this is where we get onto the specific questions for you. Leia or Rey?
Oh, Leia.
Yeah. Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon?
Obi-Wan.
The light side or the dark side?
Dark side.
Dark side, my man. And just because I watched Avengers Endgame last night, I've got to ask, Captain America or Iron Man?
Iron Man.
Nice.
I was Team Iron Man on that whole Civil War thing.
Yeah, me too.
Which upset my friend, Chase Ingram, if you guys know him, who's on the broadcast team. He's a huge Captain America fan. I was like, nah, man, I got to go Team Iron Man on this one. I feel like he was playing the long game, whereas Cap was being very short-sighted in that whole thing.
I was Team Captain America.
And most people are. I get it, but I was just like, I think Iron Man's approach was much more practical. Maybe that's just the dad in me now. Like that's a much more practical, sensible approach that Iron Man was taking.
I was always Team Iron Man. I always just thought to myself, I was like, he just like, I always feel like Tony Stark was just like always upfront about everything, and whereas like Iron Man, like Captain America was just like too good to be true. I'm like, nah.
Yeah, he was too.
Robert Downey Jr., isn't it? Like Tony Stark is basically what he's like in real life.
He does a fantastic job of playing Iron Man. He was probably my favorite. He and Thor, my two favorites.
Yeah, Thor. Okay, Iron Man or Thor?
Oh, Iron Man.
Iron Man, yeah.
But again, this is 1A and 1A. This is not.
Okay, amazing. Sean, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Guys. Thanks for having me.
Taking the time to come and speak to us. Obviously, get up super early to have a chat with us, which we do appreciate. Obviously, for everybody that's listening, please like and subscribe, share. Thank you very much for giving us a listen. And obviously, 5-star reviews are always helpful for us on iTunes. And like I say, on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Took Josh ages to figure out how to get that on there, so it's really important. And again, thank you very much for joining us, guys. Peace.